Hello friend, welcome to the Galactic HFY Story, where stories and science combine to create the magic. With real human voices, no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for the latest updates and get ready for the real experience of science. Let's start.
They waited for an armada. They got a freighter. And that's when the Krell Dominion learned their first lesson about humans. We don't need permission to start a fight. The observation deck of the Krell battle station, Hierarch's Fang, stretched across 200 meters of reinforced durasteel and crystalline viewports. Commander Thexelar stood at its center, all four arms clasped behind his chitinous back, watching the designated arrival coordinates with the patience of a predator who'd already won. Around him, junior officers moved through their stations with the efficient boredom of those performing a ritual rather than actual work. Displays flickered, data scrolled. The vast machinery of Krell military superiority hummed its eternal song. Temporal marker approaching, announced sensor operator Kivnash, her voice carrying that particular flatness that came from delivering the same information 17 times in as many cycles. Thexelar didn't respond, didn't need to. This was theater now. The humans had received their summons 3 standard months ago. The terms were clear. Present your fleet for inspection and subjugation, or the Krell Dominion would reduce Earth's orbital infrastructure to glowing debris and move on to the populated cities below. Standard procedure. The Dominion had been doing this for 6,000 years across 400 systems. Most species folded immediately. Some took a little orbital bombardment to convince. None had ever chosen the third option, fighting back. Warp signature detected, Kivnash said. Now Thexelar allowed himself the smallest flex of his mandibles. The equivalent of a human smile. And if humans smiled with bone plates that could shear through steel. Display it! The main viewport shimmered and magnified. Empty space folded, tore, and vomited out something from faster-than-light transit. One ship. Thexelar's primary eyes narrowed. His secondary eyes, the ones that tracked heat and motion, widened in confusion. One. Single. Ship. Are our sensors malfunctioning? His voice came out sharper than intended. Negative, Commander. All systems nominal. One contact. It's transmitting identification codes now. The bridge fell silent, except for the background hum of a war machine with nothing to fight. Classification? Thexelar asked, though part of him already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Kivnash stared at her console like it had personally insulted her clutch mothers. It's reading as a commercial cargo vessel. Mass roughly 12,000 tons. No visible weapon emplacements. Drive signature consistent with civilian-grade fusion propulsion. A cargo ship. Yes, Commander. They sent us a cargo ship. It appears so, Commander. Thexelar's mandibles ground together hard enough to produce a sound like stones in a tumbler. Around him, the bridge crew exchanged looks. Some confused, some amused. All of them arriving at the same conclusion. The humans were idiots. Hail them! Thexelar ordered. Let's hear what species of stupidity explains this. The communications array pulsed. Seconds passed. Then the main viewport split and a human face appeared. Thexelar had seen humans before, of course. The Dominion maintained extensive files on all potential subjects. Bipedal mammals, inadequate sensory organs, pathetically slow reflexes. Their homeworld was a death world by most standards, wildly unstable climate, excessive gravity, atmospheric composition that would kill half the species in the galaxy, but they'd evolved there, so they thought it was normal. Cute, really, like watching insects think they were tigers. The human on the screen was male, probably. They were hard to tell apart sometimes. Darker skin tone, hair cropped short, eyes that didn't look afraid enough. I'm Captain Marcus Webb, the human said. His voice carried through the translation matrix with that weird rhythmic quality human languages had. Commanding the cargo hauler Indomitable Spirit, I'm here to discuss your demands. Thexelar leaned forward. You're here to discuss, not comply, not surrender. Discuss. That's right. You understand our terms? Oh, I understand them fine. Webb's expression didn't change. You want us to hand over our orbital defenses, submit to Dominion authority, and become a client species under Krell governance. In exchange, you promise not to turn our cities into radioactive craters. An accurate summary. Yeah, well, we have a counteroffer. Thexelar felt his tertiary heart skip. A counteroffer. From a species that should be on their knees begging. I'm listening. Leave. The word hung in the space between ships like a physical thing. I'm sorry, Thexelar said slowly. Did you just... Leave. Pack up your pretty battle station. Point it at someone else. Because you're not getting Earth. And every second you waste here is a second you're not solving the real problem. And what problem is that? Webb's eyes finally showed something other than calm. They showed pity. Commander, with all due respect, you're about to get your chitin-covered ass handed to you by a cargo ship. And when this is over, you're going to remember this moment. The moment you could have walked away. Thexelar's mandibles spread wide. Around him, his crew stiffened. Sensor stations went active. Weapon tracking systems painted the tiny human ship with enough targeting lasers to carve it into constituent atoms. You brought a cargo vessel to threaten a Krell battle station, Thexelar said quietly. Either you're insane or suicidal. Third option, Webb said. I'm human. We specialize in bad decisions that work out. Your ship masses 12,000 tons. This station masses 4 million. You have no visible weapons. We have enough firepower to sterilize a continent. Explain to me how this works out for you. Webb smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone holding cards nobody knew existed. Commander, you ever study human history? I have. Then you know what happened every time someone showed up with bigger guns and told us to surrender. Enlighten me. We build bigger guns. We fight dirty. We refuse to quit even when quitting is the smart play. And most importantly, Webb leaned closer to his camera. We remember. Thexelar felt something cold settle into his primary stomach. The human wasn't ranting, wasn't posturing. He was stating facts with the calm of someone running through a checklist. Your people have been doing this for 6,000 years, Webb continued. Showing up, making demands, breaking species that don't comply. It's worked great. But here's the thing you need to understand about humans, Commander. We're not good at compliance. You'll learn. Will we? Because from where I'm sitting, you're making the same mistake everyone makes with us. You're looking at our technology level, our military capacity, our lack of galactic influence, and you're concluding we're weak. You are weak. We're young. There's a difference. Thexelar's tactical display chimed. His weapons officer, a grizzled veteran named Shextoth, gestured urgently. Commander, we're detecting unusual readings from the human vessel. What kind of readings? Power fluctuations? Heat buildup? I'm not certain what we're seeing. On the view screen, Webb's smile grew wider. That'd be our cargo manifests kicking in. Cargo manifests. Yep. See, Commander, you were right about one thing. The indomitable spirit is absolutely a cargo hauler. Been running supplies between Mars and the Belt for 8 years. Boring work mostly. Fertilizer, mining equipment, medical supplies. Your point? My point is that cargo haulers have really, really big cargo bays. And right now, those bays are opening. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Thexelar stared. His crew stared. Every sensor on the battle station screamed the same impossible message. The human cargo ship was deploying combat drones. Thousands of them. They poured out of the indomitable spirit like angry wasps from a burning hive. Small, fast, each one no bigger than a Krell fighter pod. They scattered into formation patterns that spoke of military-grade coordination. What is this? Thexelar demanded. Webb shrugged. Turns out when you threaten to bomb someone's planet, they get creative with the space they've got. Every civilian vessel in Earth's merchant fleet just became a weapons platform. We can't match your technology, Commander, but we've got something better, which is spite. The drones activated, their engines flared, and Thexelar watched his perfectly orchestrated subjugation turn into something he hadn't experienced in 400 years of military service. A fair fight. All weapons free, he roared. Destroy that vessel and every piece of debris it spawned. The Hierarch's fang opened fire. Point defense lasers carved brilliant lines through vacuum. Plasma cannons discharged with the fury of caged stars. Missile batteries launched seekers by the hundreds. The human drones danced through it all. They moved wrong. That's what bothered Thexelar most. Krell combat doctrine was based on predictability, on mathematical certainty. You calculated trajectories, you led targets, you fired where the enemy would be. These drones went where they shouldn't be. They juked, they spun, they killed their engines and drifted, then reignited at angles that violated basic physics. Half of them carried no weapons at all. They just screamed through the fire corridors, drawing targeting solutions, forcing the battle station's automated defense grid to waste ammunition on empty shells. The other half carried payloads, small payloads, primitive by Krell standards. Chemical explosives wrapped around kinetic penetrators. But there were so many of them. Impacts on sections 12 through 47, Shextoth called out. Minor damage, armor holding. But they're overwhelming local defense clusters. Redirect auxiliary batteries, Thexelar ordered. I want every one of those gnats. The battle station shuddered. Not from weapon impact, from something worse. Propulsion failure. Engineering report. Thexelar's voice cracked through the command channel. The response came through static and background screaming. Cyber attack. Systems going dark. They're in our fucking network. That's impossible. Our systems are isolated. Tell that to whoever's rewriting our navigation protocols. On the view screen, Captain Webb watched the chaos with the expression of a teacher watching students fail an exam he'd already graded in his head. You've got good security, Commander, Webb said conversationally, like they were discussing weather. Really good. Quantum encrypted. Our air-gapped from external networks. Totally isolated. Then how? You scanned us when we arrived. Standard procedure, right? Check for weapons, biological threats, radiation signatures. Thexelar's mandibles went still. That scan opened a handshake protocol between our ships, Webb continued. Just for a microsecond. Just enough for our computers to say hello to yours. And in that microsecond, we introduced your systems to something we call a Trojan horse. A what? Old human trick. We're really good at it. See, your computers are more advanced than ours, faster, more efficient, but they're built on the same basic logic gates. Binary thinking. And binary thinking has a fatal flaw. What flaw? Webb's smile was arctic. It doesn't account for us thinking differently. The battle station's lights flickered. Gravity stuttered. Then somewhere deep in the superstructure, emergency bulkheads began to seal. You can't take this station, Thexelar said. But his voice lacked conviction now. Don't need to take it, Webb replied. Just need to break it enough that you remember this conversation every time you look at repair estimates. Another shudder, stronger this time. You're committing an act of war against the Dominion, Thexelar said. Do you understand what that means? The full might of Krell military force descending on your pathetic system? Bring it. 2 words. Flat, final. We'll destroy you, Thexelar said. Maybe, probably even. But here's the thing, Commander. Webb leaned forward one last time. You'll remember us. Every species you threaten from here on out, you'll wonder, are they like the humans? Will they fight? And that hesitation, that little voice in your primary brain asking if you really want this fight, that's us. That's humanity's real weapon. What weapon? We make you second-guess yourselves. The connection cut. The drones disengaged simultaneously, retreating back to the indomitable spirit in perfect formation. The cargo hauler rotated, presented its stern to the crippled battle station, and engaged its drives. Thexular stood in the flickering emergency lighting of his command deck, surrounded by screaming alarms and crew members trying to restore basic functionality to a war machine that had been systematically dismantled by commercial cargo vessel. "Do we pursue?" Shextoth asked quietly. Thexular stared at the retreating ship, at the emptiness it left behind, at the calculations running through his tactical computer showing the resource cost of repairing the damage. One ship, one human crew, and the entire psychological foundation of Krell dominance had just developed cracks. "No," he said finally. "Let them go." "Commander, I need to make a report. The hierarchy needs to know what we're dealing with." He turned away from the viewport, turned away from the tiny speck of light that was the indomitable spirit fleeing back to its warm blue world. Turned away from the first species in 6,000 years to tell the Krell Dominion 2 words: come, try, and mean it. The damage assessment took 6 hours to compile. The final report sat on Thexular's desk like an accusation. 23% propulsion efficiency, 47% defensive grid capacity, 89% computer systems compromised or quarantined, 0 Krell casualties, 0 human casualties. A perfect humiliation. Thexular read it 3 times, then activated his private comm channel to Krell High Command. The holographic projection of Archon Velcross materialized, 6 arms, ceremonial armor, a face that had ordered the subjugation of 60 species without losing sleep over any of them. "Your report is concerning," Velcross said, each word carefully measured. "It should be, Archon. A single cargo vessel. Yes. Defeated a battle station. Not defeated, humiliated. There's a difference. They made their point and left." Velcross's mandibles worked silently. Processing. Calculating. "Well, what point?" "That we can't make them afraid. And fear is our only real weapon, Archon. We don't actually conquer species through military might. We do it by showing overwhelming force until they collapse psychologically. The humans..." Thexular paused. "The humans won't collapse. Every species collapses. Have you read their history?" "Briefly." "Read it again. Closely. Every civilization that tried to break them. Every empire that assumed they'd submit. They're still there, Archon. And all those empires?" Thexular let the silence finish his sentence. Velcross was quiet for a long moment. "Are you suggesting we abandon the Earth subjugation?" "I'm suggesting we reclassify it." "As what?" "A warning." "Explain." Thexular pulled up a file on his secondary screen. Earth's location, its resource value, its strategic significance. All of it irrelevant compared to one simple fact. "They're 300 light-years from our nearest major colony," Thexular said. "Currently, they have interplanetary capability only. No faster than light travel of their own. No galactic presence. But they're working on it. Their technology advances exponentially. Then we should crush them now, before they become a threat. We'd have to commit a fleet, a real fleet, dozens of capital ships, thousands of troops, and even then..." Thexular felt his tertiary heart rate spike, just thinking about it. They'd fight every meter, every city. They'd wage asymmetric warfare. They'd turn their entire civilization into a weapon. So the cost of conquering Earth versus the benefit of conquering Earth is mathematically stupid. We'd win, eventually. But the resources we'd burn doing it could subjugate 10 systems that would actually surrender. Velcross's eyes narrowed. "You want to leave them alone?" "I want to quarantine them, mark their system as hazardous. Let other species know. These ones bite. And then we watch. We wait. And when they finally develop FTL and come looking for us, and they will, Archon, they absolutely will, we'll be ready. That's not how the Dominion operates. The Dominion has operated the same way for 6,000 years because it's never met anyone like this. We need to adapt." Another silence. Longer this time. "I'll take your recommendation to the High Council," Velcross said finally. "But Thexular?" "Yes, Archon?" This human defiance cannot stand unpunished. We need a response that maintains Dominion credibility. What kind of response? Velcross smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'll let you know. The connection severed. Thexelar sat alone in his damaged command center, surrounded by repair crews and the ghosts of certainty, and thought about Captain Marcus Webb's words. We make you second-guess yourselves. Damn the human to whatever hell his species believed in. He'd been right. Marcus Webb didn't sleep for 3 days after the indomitable spirit limped back to Earth orbit. Not because of trauma, not because of fear. Because every government, military organization, media outlet, and private citizen with a comlink wanted to talk to the man who'd told the Krell Dominion to fuck off and lived to brag about it. He sat in a debriefing room deep inside Geneva's Unified Earth Command bunker, because humanity had built those the moment they learned hostile aliens existed, and watched a panel of stern-faced officials try to figure out if he was a hero or a maniac. You understand you violated direct orders, said Admiral Chen, her voice carrying that particular exhaustion that came from cleaning up other people's messes for 40 years. The Security Council's directive was clear. Stall for time, not engage. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The debriefing room smelled like recycled air and cold coffee. I stalled. They're not shooting at us anymore, are they? Because you crippled their battle station. Because I made them think twice about picking this fight. Marcus met her eyes. Admiral, with respect. Yeah, we weren't going to diplomacy our way out of subjugation. The Krell don't negotiate. They dictate. Someone had to show them we're not dictation-friendly. Chen's jaw worked. She wanted to be angry. Part of her probably was. But another part, the part that had read his after-action report 17 times, couldn't quite dismiss the results. 1 cargo ship, 0 friendly casualties, enemy battle station neutralized without firing a single kinetic round. It was the kind of tactical victory that ended up in textbooks with words like asymmetric and paradigm shift attached to it. The Krell will retaliate, said Ambassador Okonkwo, speaking up from the far end of the table. You've humiliated them. Entities like the Dominion don't forgive humiliation. Good, Marcus said. Everyone stared. Good? Okonkwo repeated slowly. We needed them to take us seriously. Can't do that by rolling over. Can't do that by asking nicely. You want respect in the galactic community? You earn it by being too expensive to push around. That's not diplomacy, Okonkwo said. No, it's deterrence. Different thing. The silence stretched. Marcus could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down like atmospheric pressure. These people had spent careers building frameworks for peaceful coexistence. He'd just taken a cargo hauler and turned it into a middle finger visible from 3 star systems away. What's done is done, Chen said finally. The question now is, what happens next? Next? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Next we get ready. For what? For the Krell to come back, because they will. But this time, they'll know what they're walking into. Chen activated a holographic display. Earth hung there, blue and fragile, orbited by stations and satellites and the accumulated infrastructure of a species that had barely crawled out of its gravity well before learning the universe wanted to kick it back down. Our defensive capacity is limited, she said. We have orbital platforms, ground-based railguns, a fleet of ships that were designed for system patrol, not fleet engagement. If the Krell commit serious resources, they won't. You sound certain. I am certain. I talked to their commander, Admiral, looked him in his weird bug eyes and watched him do the math. They can beat us, but it'll cost them. And for what? Earth's got nothing they can't get easier somewhere else. Except precedent, Okonkwo said quietly. If humanity defies the Dominion and survives, every other species under Krell subjugation sees that. Sees hope. Marcus nodded. Which is why they won't come with a fleet. What will they send? Something quieter. Something that lets them save face while testing if we're actually as crazy as we seem. Chen's eyes narrowed. You have intelligence suggesting this? I have pattern recognition. The Krell have been doing this for 6,000 years. They're good at it. They won't change tactics just because one species threw a punch. They'll adapt, probe, find our weaknesses. And when they do? Marcus stood up. His knees popped. 3 days without sleep was catching up fast. Then we show them we don't have weaknesses. Just different kinds of stubbornness. He left the debriefing room to scattered applause from the junior officers monitoring outside. Someone had leaked his after-action report to the public feeds. He was already a meme, a symbol, the cargo captain who'd told an empire to try harder. Fame felt weird, like wearing someone else's shoes. His comm chimed. Private channel. Encrypted 6 ways from Sunday. Webb. Captain. The voice was female, accented, Russian, maybe, and carried the kind of authority that made admirals stand straighter. This is Director Volkov, Strategic Intelligence Division. We need to talk. About? About the fact that you're right. The Krell are coming back. We've intercepted communications, and they're not sending a fleet. Marcus felt his pulse kick up. What are they sending? An infiltrator. Someone to assess Earth's defenses from the inside. Someone to find the cracks in our armor. When? Already here. The thing about galactic civilization Marcus learned over the next 72 hours was that it had rules, stupid rules, bureaucratic nightmares that made Earth's old United Nations look efficient. But rules nonetheless. One of those rules, warfare between species had to follow established protocols. You couldn't just show up and start bombing. You had to declare intent, exchange formal grievances, allow for mediation periods. The Krell had followed those rules for 6,000 years. It was how they maintained their reputation as civilized conquerors. They didn't destroy species out of spite. They simply absorbed them into the Dominion structure, claimed it was for everyone's benefit, and moved on. Except now they had a problem. Humanity had humiliated them in a way that violated the normal script. The Krell couldn't just return with overwhelming force. That would look like panic, like they'd lost control of the narrative. So instead, they sent an observer. Her name was Shaltiva. Krell diplomatic caste. 6 arms. Polished chitin the color of burnished copper. Eyes that tracked everything and revealed nothing. She arrived on a small courier ship broadcasting diplomatic credentials that Earth's nascent Department of Xeno Affairs scrambled to verify. Marcus watched her shuttle touch down at Geneva Spaceport from the observation deck of UEC headquarters. "She's here to gather intelligence," Director Volkov said, standing beside him. She was shorter than he'd expected. Grey hair, eyes that had seen enough classified briefings to qualify as weapons themselves. Standard procedure, learn our capabilities, map our infrastructure, find leverage. And we're just letting her? Diplomatic immunity. If we refuse her entry, we're violating galactic convention. That gives the Krell legal justification for retaliation. Legal, Marcus said. They were going to bomb our cities and we're worried about legal. Politics don't stop being important just because someone points a gun at you. Volkov pulled up a data pad. But we're not stupid. Every moment she's on Earth, we're watching, listening, building our own intelligence profile. What do you need from me? You're the man who defied the Dominion. She's going to want to meet you, study you, figure out if you're an anomaly or representative of human thinking. And when she does? Volkov's smile was thin. You show her exactly what she expects to see. A reckless, aggressive human who doesn't know when he's outmatched. Won't that make things worse? Captain Webb, the Krell respect strength. They don't respect posturing or false bravado, but they respect genuine conviction. If Shaltiva reports back that humanity is irrationally committed to resistance, that we'd rather burn than bend, then the math changes for them. Marcus turned that over in his head. Psychological warfare, not with guns or ships, but with pure stubborn refusal to play the victim. When does she want to meet? Tonight. Private dinner. Geneva Tower. Top floor. Fancy. She's making a point. I's showing she's not afraid to be surrounded by potential enemies? Is she right to not be afraid? Volkov's expression didn't change. That depends entirely on how tonight goes. Geneva Tower at sunset was objectively beautiful. Glass and steel catching the last light, the city spread below like a circuit board coming to life. The restaurant at the top catered to exactly the kind of people who needed to be seen being powerful. Marcus showed up in his merchant marine dress uniform. Clean, professional, not trying too hard. Shaltiva was already there. She sat at a table by the windows, all 6 arms arranged in a configuration that Marcus's cultural briefing packet had labeled Formal Observation Mode. 2 arms folded across her thorax, 2 resting on the table, 2 held slightly elevated, ready to gesture. Her eyes tracked him as he approached. All 4 of them. Primary pair focused on his face. Secondary pair scanning his body language, his hands, the way he walked. Captain Webb. Her voice came through a translation device that rendered Krell's speech patterns into something almost human. Almost. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Seemed rude to refuse. Marcus sat. The chair was human standard, but the table had been modified for multi-species use. Though I'm surprised you wanted to meet me personally. Why? I'm the guy who broke your battle station. Precisely why I wanted to meet you. Shalativa gestured with her upper right arm. A waiter appeared, human, probably terrified, definitely overpaid for this specific nightmare assignment, and took their order. I study anomalies, Captain, and you are very much an anomaly. How so? Most species, when confronted with Dominion authority, respond predictably. Fear, submission, occasionally rage, but rage tempered by self-preservation instinct. Her mandibles clicked softly. You showed none of those things. You showed curiosity. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. She was good, really good. Curious about what? About whether we would adapt, whether we would recognize the trap you'd set. Shaltiva leaned forward slightly. That drone deployment wasn't desperation, Captain. It was theater. You wanted us to see exactly how vulnerable we were to unconventional tactics. And now I'm here, studying, learning, determining if your species is genuinely as dangerous as that one encounter suggested, or if you're simply skilled at bluffing. The waiter returned with drinks. Something amber for Marcus, something that bubbled and glowed faintly for Shaltiva. Marcus took a sip. Whiskey, good whiskey. Someone had done their homework on him. You think we're bluffing? I think you're clever. But cleverness and capability are different things. A small species can appear large through careful positioning, through making the right threats at the right moments. Shaltiva's secondary eyes fixed on him. The question is whether you can sustain that appearance when pressed. Only one way to find out. Indeed. They ate. The food was excellent. The conversation danced around direct threats like boxers testing reach. Shaltiva asked about human culture, military structure, political organization. She framed it as academic interest. But Marcus heard the intelligence gathering underneath. He gave her exactly what Volkov had briefed him to give. Truth wrapped in implications. How many ships does Earth currently have capable of engaging in fleet combat? Shaltiva asked over dessert. Classified. An estimate then? Enough. Her mandibles spread slightly. Amusement. Enough is not a number, Captain. Sure it is. It's the number that makes the cost-benefit analysis fall apart for potential aggressors. Marcus met her eyes. All 4 of them. Look, I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a strategist. I haul cargo for a living. But I understand economics. And the economics of conquering Earth are terrible. Explain? You'd win, eventually, but you'd lose ships, you'd lose personnel. You'd spend years occupying a planet full of people who I really don't like being told what to do. And at the end of it all, what do you get? A resentful client species that'll sabotage your infrastructure, poison your supply lines, and generally make your existence miserable until you give up or commit genocide. The Dominion has successfully integrated 400 species. How many of them fought back? Shalativa paused. just for a second. But that second told Marcus everything. None, she admitted. Not successfully. Right. Because the Dominion is really good at picking fights it can win cleanly. Overwhelming force. Psychological domination. Break the enemy's will before the shooting starts. Marcus leaned back. But we're not built like that. Humans don't break clean. We crack. We fracture. We turn into 10,000 pieces that all keep fighting independently. That sounds like a weakness. It's the opposite of a weakness. It's why every empire that ever tried to conquer us eventually collapsed. You can't negotiate with a Hydra. Cut off one head, 7 more pop up. And every single one of them remembers why they hate you. Shaltiva was quiet for a long moment. Her upper arms moved in a pattern Marcus's briefing had labeled deep consideration. You speak of your species as though it's uniquely resistant to subjugation, she said finally. But I've reviewed your history. You've conquered each other repeatedly. Empires have risen and fallen on your world. Sure, but they were our empires, our fights. The moment someone from outside tries it, Marcus smiled. We've got this weird habit of unifying against external threats. It doesn't matter if we hate each other. Doesn't matter if we were at war yesterday. You threaten Earth, and suddenly, we're all on the same team. Tribalism. Species-level stubbornness. And if the Dominion decided that stubbornness was too expensive to tolerate? If we simply sterilized your world from orbit and moved on? Marcus had been briefed on this question, expected it. But hearing it out loud still sent ice through his veins. Then you'd prove we were right about you, he said quietly. And every other species in the galaxy would see the Krell Dominion for what it really is. Bullies who murder anyone who stands up to them. How long does your empire last after that? Shaltiva's eyes narrowed. All 4 of them. You're gambling that we care more about reputation than results. I'm gambling that you're smart enough to recognize a losing proposition when it's explained to you in small words. The silence stretched. Outside the windows, Geneva's lights twinkled. Humanity going about its business, unaware that its fate was being negotiated over expensive wine and veiled threats. I will include your perspective in my report, Shaltiva said finally, along with my observations of Earth's defensive capabilities and cultural psychology. And what will that report say? That you are exactly as dangerous as you claim to be. Not because of your weapons, not because of your technology. Her mandibles clicked softly. Because you genuinely believe you can win, and belief, Captain Webb, is the most dangerous weapon any species can possess. She stood. All 6 arms moved in a formal gesture Marcus's cultural training identified as respectful dismissal. This was educational, she said. Glad I could help. One final question, if I may. Shoot. If the Dominion does return with sufficient force to overwhelm Earth's defenses, if we bring a fleet you cannot defeat, what will humanity do? Marcus stood as well, looked her dead in all 4 eyes. We'll make you earn every meter. We'll fight in space. We'll fight in our cities. We'll fight in our oceans and our mountains and our deserts. We'll turn our entire planet into a weapon. And when you finally plant your flag on the last human city, we'll already be building weapons in hidden bunkers to take it back. He paused. And then we'll remember, for generations, for centuries, and someday, when you've forgotten about the stubborn little species that made you work too hard, we'll be out there in the galaxy, and we'll remember. Shaltiva stared at him. Then she did something Marcus hadn't seen a Krell do before. She bowed, not a human bow, a complex gesture involving all 6 arms that his training said meant acknowledgement of a worthy opponent. I believe you, she said quietly. She left. Marcus stood alone by the windows, watching Earth's lights, and wondered if he'd just saved his species or signed its death warrant. His comm chimed. Webb. How'd it go? Volkov's voice. Either really well or catastrophically badly. Won't know which until they decide to leave us alone or turn us into a parking lot. Welcome to diplomacy. I hate diplomacy. Everyone does. That's how you know it's working. Marcus disconnected and headed for the elevator. His reflection caught in the glass. He looked tired. Looked older than he had a week ago. Looked like a man who'd just bet his entire species on one simple idea. That being too crazy to quit was the same thing as being too dangerous to fight. Time would tell if he was right. 3 weeks later, the Krell courier ship departed Earth orbit. Shaltiva's report went to Krell High Command, then to the hierarchs, then into the vast bureaucratic machinery that governed an empire spanning 400 star systems. The conclusions were simple. Earth was defensible, but not easily conquerable. Humanity was technologically inferior, but psychologically resistant to subjugation. The cost of forcing compliance exceeded the value of the resource gain. Recommendation: quarantine, monitor, engage diplomatically but maintain military distance. In other words, let the humans alone and hope they stayed in their corner of the galaxy. The vote wasn't unanimous. Some hierarchs argued for making an example of Earth, for showing the galaxy that defiance had consequences. But the math was the math. And the math said humanity had successfully made itself too expensive to be worth the trouble. Marcus learned about the decision through official channels 3 months after his dinner with Shaltiva. The Krell Dominion would not be pursuing subjugation operations against Earth. Trade relations would be established through neutral third parties. Diplomatic contact would remain minimal. Earth had won, not through military might, through being too stubborn to be worth the headache. And he was in his quarters on the Indomitable Spirit, back to hauling cargo like nothing had happened, when Admiral Chen's call came through. "Congratulations, Captain. You've successfully annoyed an empire into leaving us alone." Marcus laughed. It came out tired, relieved. "That was the plan. The UEC wants to award you a medal, multiple medals, possibly name a ship after you." "Can they not?" "Probably not, no. You're a symbol now. The man who told the Krell to fuck off." "I didn't say fuck off." "You implied it strongly enough that the sentiment carries." Marcus stared out his porthole at Earth below. Blue. Fragile. Still there. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we build. Faster, harder. We develop FTL capability. We expand our defensive perimeter. We make sure that the next time someone shows up with demands, we're ready. And if the Krell change their minds, then we do exactly what you told them we'd do. We fight. We make it hurt. We refuse to quit." Chen paused. "You taught us something, Captain. You taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being too much trouble to kill. That's a depressing philosophy. It's a human philosophy, and apparently it works." The call ended. Marcus sat alone in his quarters, surrounded by stars, and thought about the path humanity had just stepped onto. They'd made themselves known to the galaxy, made themselves feared, made themselves a problem that empires decided wasn't worth solving. It was a victory, a real one. But victories had consequences. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, learning, seeing that the Krell could be defied. And humanity had just become the example everyone would point to when they wanted to believe resistance was possible. That was going to make things complicated. But complicated, Marcus figured, beat conquered. He pulled up his navigation charts. Mars run tomorrow. Routine cargo haul. Fertilizer and mining equipment. Normal work. Normal life. As if he hadn't just changed the course of human history by being too stubborn to surrender. Outside his window, Earth turned. Unaware. Unconcerned. Alive. 18 months after the Krell decided Earth was more trouble than it was worth, Marcus Webb found himself in a bar on Titan Station explaining to a very drunk Centauran merchant why humans were completely insane. No, listen, the Centauran slurred, his 3-fingered hands gripping the counter like it might escape. You fought the Krell, the species that breaks empires for breakfast, and you did it with a cargo ship. Technically, a modified cargo ship, Marcus said into his drink. Big difference. There is no difference. The Centaurans' translator struggled to keep up with his enthusiasm. Do you understand what you did? The Krell haven't retreated from a subjugation attempt in 3,000 years. Marcus sipped his whiskey. The bar was called the Outer Limits, which was both accurate. Titan Station orbited on the edge of human-controlled space, and optimistic, given that the limits kept expanding as humanity built faster ships and braver stations. We got lucky, Marcus said. Lucky. The Centauran laughed so hard, his breathing apparatus wheezed. Humans don't get lucky. Humans make luck nervous. Around them, the bar hummed with the chaos of a frontier station. Humans, yes, but also the first trickle of alien species willing to risk contact with the crazy bipeds who'd told the Krell Dominion where they could shove their subjugation demands. Centaurans, Vexil traders. A table of Karathi engineers arguing about fusion reactor efficiency in musical chirps. Even a lone Krell, junior diplomatic caste, judging by the simple chitin patterns, sitting in the corner and very deliberately not making eye contact. First contact had turned into fourth contact, then 17th, then someone lost count, and the Department of Xeno Affairs just started publishing weekly updates on which new species wanted to talk trade, technology, or mutual defense pacts. Turned out defying the Krell made you interesting to everyone the Krell had been bullying for the last 6 millennia. Hey, you know what the scary part is? The Centauran continued, leaning close enough that Marcus could smell whatever passed for alcohol in his species biochemistry. Everyone's waiting to see what you do next. Next? Yeah, next. The Krell leave you alone. Fine. But now you've got FTL capability. You're expanding, building stations, making contact. The Centauran's eyes, large, liquid, disturbingly sincere, fixed on Marcus. Everyone wants to know, are humans going to be the good kind of powerful or the bad kind? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He was saved by his comm chiming. Priority channel. UEC encryption. Sorry, he told the Centauran. Duty calls. It always does with you people. Marcus stepped into the station's commerce ring, found a quiet corridor, and answered. Webb. Captain. Volkov's voice, sharp as always. Or we have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where 3 species just declared independence from the Krell Dominion and are currently requesting military assistance from Earth. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Tell me you're joking. Strategic intelligence doesn't joke. We analyze probable futures and deliver bad news with supporting documentation. A pause. They're calling it the Broken Chain Coalition. Vexil, Saurian, and Tyrellian governments. Simultaneous declarations broadcast across 17 star systems. Very coordinated, very sudden. Let me guess. They saw what happened with Earth and figured if we could do it, they could too. That's the assessment, yes? And now they want us to back them up in a war with the Krell. Not explicitly. They're requesting defensive coordination and technological exchange. But yes, they want us in the fight. Marcus leaned against the corridor wall. Above him, Titan's methane atmosphere swirled in patterns that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. Beautiful and lethal, like everything in space. What's the UEC's position? Officially, we're evaluating the request through proper diplomatic channels. Unofficially, Volkov's voice dropped. We're scared shitless. If we back these species and the Krell decide to make an example of them, we're at war with an empire that spans 400 systems. And if we don't back them, then we look like cowards who inspire rebellion but won't support it. Every species in the galaxy learns that human defiance is hollow. That we'll fight for ourselves, but abandon our allies. Those aren't allies. They're strangers hoping our reputation is worth something. Reputation is worth everything in galactic politics, Captain. It's the only currency we have right now. Marcus closed his eyes, thought about captain's chairs and cargo manifests and a life where the hardest decision was which shipping route saved the most fuel. When do they need an answer? The Krell have given the Coalition 72 hours to rescind their declarations. After that, they'll respond with force. So we have 72 hours to decide if we're the species that stands up to bullies or the species that got lucky once. Christ. Yes, that's approximately the Security Council's position as well. Volkov paused. They want you at Geneva. Tomorrow. Why, you're testifying before the Defense Committee. Why me? I'm a cargo captain. You're the cargo captain who started this. The one every species points to when they talk about human courage. Your voice carries weight. My voice is tired, Director. Then rest on the flight. You're already booked on the next Earth shuttle. The call ended. Marcus stood in the corridor, surrounded by the ambient hum of a space station that existed because humans refused to accept limitations, and wondered when exactly he'd become responsible for galactic revolution. Geneva looked the same. Same towers, same mountains in the distance, same sense of carefully organized chaos as politicians tried to manage a species that had accidentally become the galaxy's inspirational poster child for defiance. And the Defense Committee met in a bunker 300 meters below the city, reinforced against everything from nuclear strikes to kinetic bombardment. The kind of place you built when you accepted that making powerful enemies was part of the job description. Marcus sat at a table facing 15 representatives from Earth's major governments, military branches, and intelligence services. Admiral Chen was there. So was Volkov. So was a woman Marcus didn't recognize. Dr. Sarah Kamathi, according to her nameplate, Cultural Anthropology and Xenosociology. Captain Webb, began Chairman Torres, a man whose political career had somehow survived First Contact, the Krell crisis, and 3 separate votes of no confidence. Thank you for coming on short notice. Didn't realize I had a choice. Polite laughter. Nervous laughter. The kind people made when they weren't sure if you were joking. Let's get to it, Torres continued. The Broken Chain Coalition has requested Earth's support in their independence movement. We need to decide how to respond. Your perspective is valuable, given your unique experience with Krell diplomacy. I broke their battle station. That's not diplomacy. No, but it established a precedent. You showed the galaxy that the Krell can be challenged. Now 3 species are following that precedent. The question before us is, do we support them? Marcus leaned back. What are our options? Dr. Kamathi spoke up. We have 4 primary response vectors. 1. Direct military assistance. We send ships, weapons, advisors, show active support for the coalition's independence. That's suicide, Marcus said. 2. Kamathi continued without acknowledging the interruption. Indirect support. Technology transfer, intelligence sharing, training. We help them help themselves. Still probably suicide. 3. Diplomatic mediation. We attempt to negotiate between the coalition and the Krell. Position ourselves as neutral arbiters. The Krell will laugh us out of the room. 4. We do nothing. Express sympathy for the coalition's position, but maintain that Earth's policy is non-intervention in conflicts between established galactic powers. Marcus looked around the table. That's the smart play. It's also the coward's play, said Admiral Chen. And it undermines everything we've built. Our entire defensive strategy relies on the perception that humanity is tough, unpredictable, and willing to fight for its principles. We abandoned the coalition. That perception evaporates. Better that than starting a war we can't win. Can't we? Chen pulled up a holographic display. Fleet compositions, resource allocations, strategic projections. We're not the species we were 18 months ago, Captain. We've quadrupled our ship production, developed new weapons systems, built alliances with species the Krell have alienated. We're not strong enough to defeat the Dominion in open warfare, but we're strong enough to make intervention costly. How costly? Estimates range from 15 to 40% casualty rates for Krell forces in a sustained campaign against coalition worlds with Earth support. That's a 35% variance. Yes, because we're guessing. The Krell have never faced coordinated resistance from multiple species. We don't know how they'll adapt. Marcus studied the projections, numbers, percentages. Lives reduced to statistical probabilities. What does the coalition bring to the table? He asked. A new voice. More than you'd expect. Commander Adeyemi, Military Intelligence. She gestured, and the display shifted to show coalition resources. The Vexil control 3 major trade routes. The Saurians have advanced sensor technology the Krell haven't been able to replicate. The Tyrellians have orbital mining operations that produce rare elements essential for FTL drive construction. So they're valuable. Strategically, yes. They're not just asking for help, they're offering partnership, full technology exchange, mutual defense pacts, or access to resources and infrastructure that could accelerate Earth's development by decades. Marcus felt the political trap closing. Of course, they were offering partnership. Of course, they had valuable resources. That's how you got someone to fight your wars. Let me ask a different question, he said. What happens if we support them and lose? If the Krell decide Earth crossed a line and come back with everything they've got? Silence. Then Volkov. Then we fight. And we make it expensive enough that the Krell think twice before trying this again with another species. That's not an answer. That's a slogan. It's the only answer we have. Volkov's eyes were hard. Captain, humanity's position in the galactic community is precarious. We're too new to have established power, too aggressive to be ignored. Our only advantage is that we've convinced everyone we're too crazy to predict. If we abandon the coalition, we lose that advantage. We become calculable, and calculable species get conquered. So we fight to maintain our reputation as crazy. We fight to maintain our independence. The reputation is just the weapon we're using. Marcus looked at Admiral Chen. Your honest assessment. Can we win this? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Define win. Can we help the coalition achieve independence without Earth getting destroyed in the process? The Krell will respond to coalition independence with force, that's certain. If we support the coalition, we become targets, also certain. But will the Krell commit enough resources to actually conquer Earth while also fighting the coalition? She paused. My assessment? No. It's not logistically feasible. They'd be fighting a forefront war across hundreds of light years. Even the Dominion has limits. Your uncertain assessment? Chen's expression darkened. We're gambling that the Krell think like us. That they'll do cost-benefit analysis and make rational decisions. But empires don't always act rationally when their authority is challenged. If they decide making an example of Earth is worth any cost. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Marcus turned to Dr. Kimathi. You've been quiet. Cultural anthropology perspective. What are we missing? Kimathi adjusted her glasses. Everything we're discussing assumes the Krell Dominion operates as a monolithic entity. It doesn't. It's a complex coalition of species with competing interests, but held together by the Krell themselves through a combination of military force and political manipulation. If the coalition's rebellion spreads, if other species see it succeeding, the Dominion could fracture. That's good for us. Or catastrophic. A fractured Dominion might lash out, might decide that maintaining control requires increasingly brutal demonstrations, she hesitated, might conclude that humanity is a virus that needs to be eliminated before it spreads further. Cheerful thought. You asked what we're missing. We're missing 6,000 years of Krell political evolution. We're making decisions based on 18 months of limited contact. We're guessing. The room fell quiet. Marcus felt the weight of every eye on him. Waiting for the cargo captain who'd become a symbol to say something wise, something inspiring. He had nothing. I can't tell you what to do, he said finally. I'm not a general. I'm not a politician. I haul cargo and occasionally make terrible decisions that somehow work out. He stood. But I can tell you what happens if we do nothing. The coalition fights alone. They probably lose. The Krell reassert dominance. And every species in the galaxy learns that human defiance was a fluke, a one-time performance. And if we fight? Torres asked. Then we find out if we're actually as tough as we claim, or if we're just good at bluffing. Marcus met Chen's eyes. Admiral, you want my recommendation? Please. Support the coalition, but don't do it halfway. Don't send advisors and hope for the best. Go all in. Make it clear that an attack on them is an attack on us. Force the Krell to choose between backing down and fighting a war they're not sure they can win. That's an enormous risk. Everything we've done since the Krell showed up has been an enormous risk. May as well stay consistent. Chairman Torres looked around the table. We'll need to put this to a vote. Full Security Council? But Captain Webb's recommendation will carry significant weight. He paused. If we do this, if we commit to supporting the coalition, will you serve as liaison? You have experience with the Krell. You understand their psychology. I broke one battle station. That doesn't make me an expert. It makes you the closest thing we have. Marcus wanted to refuse, wanted to get back on his ship and haul cargo and let someone else save the galaxy. But he'd started this, intentionally or not. Yeah, he said. I'll do it. The meeting adjourned. Marcus found himself standing on the observation deck again, watching Geneva's lights, wondering how many times in human history someone had stood in a room full of officials and committed their species to a war nobody was certain they could win. Probably more than the history books admitted. His comm chimed. Private channel. Webb? Captain. The voice was Krell. Female. Shaltiva. I hope I'm not interrupting. How did you get this frequency? I'm Krell Diplomatic Intelligence. Getting frequencies is what I do. A pause. I wanted to give you something before your government makes its decision. What? A warning. The hierarchs are divided on the coalition issue. Some advocate for immediate military response, others recommend negotiation. But there's a third faction. Smaller. More radical. Radical how? They believe humanity is a civilizational threat, that your ideology, this notion that any species can resist Dominion authority, will destroy the galactic order if left unchecked. Shaltiva's voice was carefully controlled. This faction is advocating for what they call comprehensive sterilization, not conquest, elimination. Marcus felt ice in his veins. You're saying there are Krell who want to genocide humanity. I'm saying there are Krell who believe humanity is a disease, and diseases must be eliminated, not managed. Why are you telling me this? Because I studied your species. I wrote the report recommending quarantine over subjugation. I don't want to see that recommendation overturned by extremists. A pause. If Earth supports the coalition, you will give ammunition to the faction that wants you extinct. They will argue that humanity has proven itself an existential threat to Dominion stability. And if we abandon the coalition, then you prove you were always just bluffing, that your defiance was circumstantial. The extremists lose their argument. Marcus laughed. It came out bitter. So our choices are to be cowards or get exterminated. Great options. Welcome to galactic politics, Captain Webb. It's less fun than you'd hope. The connection severed. Marcus stood alone on the observation deck and thought about the trap humanity had built for itself. Defy the Krell, inspire rebellion, become a symbol of resistance. Now live with the consequences of that symbol. Help the coalition and risk annihilation. Abandon them and become irrelevant. No good choices. Just different flavors of danger. But that was fine. Humanity had been navigating impossible choices since the first group of apes decided walking upright was worth the back pain. They'd figure this out too, or die trying. And honestly, at this point, dying trying sounded better than living on their knees. Marcus pulled up his comm and sent a message to Admiral Chen. Count me in. Whatever we're doing, I'm in. The response came back immediately. Good. Because the Security Council just voted. We're backing the coalition. How did the vote go? Unanimous. Turns out when you give humanity a choice between smart and stubborn, we pick stubborn every time. Marcus smiled despite everything. Yeah, that sounded about right. The thing about starting a revolution, Marcus learned, was that you didn't get to control how it ended. 6 months after Earth committed to supporting the Broken Chain Coalition, the galaxy looked different, felt different. Like the old certainties had cracked, and nobody was quite sure what would grow in the fissures. The Krell came, of course, with ships, with demands, with the full weight of 6,000 years of imperial authority. And they ran headfirst into something they'd never encountered before. Species who'd learned to fight like humans. Marcus watched the Battle of Soros Prime from the bridge of the UES Relentless, Earth's first true warship, built in the frantic months after the Security Council vote. Not a retrofitted cargo hauler. Not a patrol boat with delusions of adequacy. A genuine warship designed by people who understood that sometimes the only diplomacy that worked came with railgun attachments. That the holographic display showed Saurian defense platforms engaging Krell cruisers with tactics that looked eerily familiar. Drone swarms, cyber attacks, asymmetric targeting of critical systems while avoiding direct confrontation with superior firepower. They learned fast, Captain Rodriguez said. She commanded the Relentless, which made Marcus technically a passenger despite his field commission as Coalition military liaison. 3 months ago, the Saurians were fighting like every other species the Krell conquered. Rigid formations, predictable maneuvers, easy targets. What changed? We gave them our tactical database, every dirty trick humanity ever developed. Urban warfare, guerrilla operations, psychological manipulation. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Turns out when you spend 10,000 years fighting yourselves, or do you get creative about how to kill things? On the display, a Krell battleship died. Not from a single catastrophic hit, but from 1,000 small wounds inflicted by weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate its armor. The Saurians had learned to aim for sensor arrays, communication relays, cooling systems. Death by systematic dismemberment. Krell Command is requesting negotiations, the communications officer reported. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. Seriously? They want to discuss terms for Saurian reintegration into the Dominion. They're proposing a formal summit. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just the recognition that they'd reached a decision point. Tell them we'll discuss it, Rodriguez said, but the Coalition decides the terms, not them. The message was sent. 3 hours later, and Marcus found himself on a diplomatic shuttle heading for neutral ground, a derelict trading station in unclaimed space, selected specifically because nobody could claim home field advantage. The Krell delegation arrived in a courier ship that probably cost more than Earth's entire space program. Shaltiva led them, older now, mandibles showing stress fractures, eyes that had seen her empire struggle for the first time in millennia. Captain Webb, she greeted him in the station's conference chamber. I should have known you'd be here. Couldn't miss the galaxy's first peace talk between the Krell and someone who told them no. Peace talk. Shaltiva's mandibles clicked. Is that what this is? Isn't it? That depends on what your coalition wants. The coalition delegation arrived. Vexil, Saurian, Tyrellian. Representatives from 3 species who'd spent generations under Krell rule and had finally decided enough was enough. The Vexil representative, a 6-limbed amphibian named Crosstoll, spoke first. We want independence. Full recognition of sovereignty. Immediate withdrawal of all Krell military forces from our territories. Unacceptable, Shaltiva replied. The Dominion cannot simply abandon systems we've governed for thousands of years. You didn't govern, Crosstoll said quietly. You occupied. We provided stability, protection, access to galactic markets and technology. At the cost of our autonomy. Shaltiva's arms moved in a pattern Marcus had learned to recognize as frustration. The Dominion has maintained galactic peace for 6 millennia. We've prevented countless wars, mediated disputes between species that would otherwise have destroyed each other. Our authority is the foundation of civilized coexistence. Your authority is the foundation of your comfort, Marcus said. Every species you've integrated gave up something to make the Dominion work, gave up self-determination, gave up the right to make their own mistakes. You call it stability. They call it subjugation. And what would you call it, Captain? What system would you replace Dominion governance with? Choice. The word hung in the recycled air of the station. Choice, Shaltiva repeated slowly. Yeah, let species decide for themselves. Maybe they choose to join the Dominion, maybe they don't. But it's their decision, not yours. That's chaos. It's freedom. There's a difference. Shaltiva stared at him with all four eyes. And around the table, coalition representatives watched in silence, waiting for the Krell diplomat to reveal whether this entire summit was theater or genuine negotiation. The hierarchs will never accept complete independence for coalition worlds, Shaltiva said finally. It sets a precedent that would fracture the Dominion. Then the Dominion needs to fracture, Cross-Tal said. You don't understand what you're asking for. Without Dominion authority, species will war with each other. Resources will be contested. Trade routes will collapse. Billions will die in conflicts that we currently prevent. Some of us are willing to risk that, Marcus said, rather than live under someone else's boot. Even if that risk includes your own extinction? Especially then. The silence stretched, so Marcus could hear the station's life support systems cycling, could feel the weight of 6,000 years of imperial authority pressing against one simple human idea. Better to die free than live as property. Shaltiva's mandibles worked silently, processing, calculating. Finally, she said, I need to consult with the hierarchs. This discussion requires authorization above my level. How long? 3 days, maybe less. The summit adjourned. Marcus found himself in the station's observation dome, watching stars that had witnessed empires rise and fall long before humanity figured out fire, and wondering if they'd just negotiated peace or simply delayed war. His comm chimed. Rodriguez. We've got movement. Krell fleet elements repositioning near coalition space. How many ships? Enough to make a statement. They're not withdrawing. I'm Marcus. They're reinforcing. Maybe they're just being cautious. Or maybe they're preparing for one final push. Break the coalition before it spreads further. Marcus closed his eyes, felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. One cargo ship, one refusal to bend, and now the galaxy was reshaping itself around that refusal. Keep our forces on alert, he said, but don't provoke. Let's see what the hierarchs decide. And if they decide wrong, then we find out if we're actually as good at this as we've been pretending. The hierarchs' decision came 2 days later. Not through official diplomatic channels, not through carefully worded treaties or negotiated settlements, through action. Krell forces withdrew from Soros Prime, from Vexil trading stations, from Tyrellian mining operations. Not completely, not permanently, but enough to signal something had changed. The formal message arrived 6 hours after the withdrawals began. The Krell Dominion acknowledges the sovereignty of the Broken Chain Coalition pending finalization of mutual security agreements and trade protocols. Coalition worlds will maintain independence while participating in Dominion-sponsored economic and defensive frameworks. Marcus read it 3 times, trying to pass the bureaucratic language. They're letting us go, Crossatol said, standing beside him in the station's command center. With conditions, but they're letting us go. Why? Because you were right. The Vexil's voice carried something Marcus couldn't quite identify. Awe, maybe, or fear. They calculated the cost of maintaining control and decided it exceeded the benefit. Or they're planning something. Perhaps. But for now, we're free. Actually free. Crosstoll turned to Marcus. Because of you. Because humanity showed the galaxy that the Krell could be defied. We just got stubborn. You did the hard part. We fought because you proved it was possible. Without Earth's example, we'd still be subjects. Marcus felt the weight of that settle on his shoulders like gravity. Humanity hadn't just saved itself. It had accidentally sparked the first successful rebellion against the Krell Dominion in 6,000 years. That was going to have consequences. What happens now? He asked. Now we build. Create our own systems of governance. Establish trade independent of Dominion control. Prove that species can coexist without imperial authority. Crosstoll paused. And we remember. We remember what humanity did for us. 6 months after the coalition achieved independence, Marcus was back on the indomitable Spirit. Same ship, same cargo routes, different galaxy. Earth had changed. Stations multiplied like cells dividing. The shipyards over Luna ran 3 shifts, turning out vessels that ranged from exploration scouts to heavy cruisers. Humanity had discovered that once you told an empire to fuck off and survived, other opportunities tended to present themselves. Trade agreements with the coalition, technology exchanges with species the Krell had alienated, defense pacts with worlds that suddenly saw value in befriending the crazy species that started revolutions. Earth wasn't a backwater anymore, wasn't ignored, wasn't weak, but it also wasn't safe. Marcus's comm chimed as he guided the Spirit toward Mars' approach. Priority channel, UEC encryption. Web, Captain. Admiral Chen's voice, aged by years of crisis management. We have a situation. Why do you people always start with that? Because situations keep developing. The Krell Dominion is fragmenting. 17 species have declared independence in the 6 months since the coalition's success. The hierarchs are losing control. That's good, right? Isn't that what we wanted? We wanted the coalition to be free. We didn't want to destabilize the entire galactic order. Chen paused. There are regions that relied on Krell authority to prevent conflicts. Old grudges, territorial disputes. The Dominion kept a lid on that. Now, the lid's coming off. Not our problem. It becomes our problem when species start asking Earth to mediate, to provide the stability the Krell used to enforce. Marcus felt the trap closing. You're saying we accidentally became the new Krell. I'm saying we became influential, and influence comes with responsibilities. I haul cargo, Admiral. I'm not qualified to manage galactic politics. Neither is anyone else. But you're the man who started this. The symbol. People trust you. They'll listen to you. They shouldn't. I'm just a guy who got lucky with a cargo ship full of drones. You're a guy who showed the galaxy that empires can fall. That's worth more than you think. Chen's voice softened. We need you, Marcus. The galaxy needs someone who understands that freedom isn't about replacing one empire with another. Someone who'll tell people to solve their own problems instead of looking for a new master. Marcus stared at Mars through his viewport. Red and scarred and beautiful in its hostility. Humanity had been born on a death world, learned to survive by being too stubborn to quit, and accidentally exported that stubbornness to species who'd forgotten they had it in them. What do you want me to do? We're establishing a Galactic Mediation Council, neutral ground for species to resolve disputes without warfare. Earth will host it. We want you to chair the first session. I don't know anything about mediation. Neither did the Krell. They just had bigger guns. You'll do better because you actually care if people choose freely. The cargo manifest pinged. Fertilizer delivery to Olympus Dome. Simple work. Honest work. And the kind of thing that didn't require rewriting galactic power structures. But that wasn't the galaxy they lived in anymore. Fine, Marcus said. I'll do it. But on one condition. Name it. When this is over, when the galaxy figures out how to govern itself without empires, I go back to hauling cargo and everyone forgets I exist. Chen laughed. It sounded tired, relieved. Deal, though I suspect the galaxy won't let you disappear that easily. The galaxy doesn't get a vote. The first Galactic Mediation Council session convened 3 months later in a neutral station built specifically for the purpose. Humanity's first major contribution to galactic infrastructure, a place where species could argue without shooting. Marcus sat at the head of a table, surrounded by representatives from 40 species. Some he recognized, most he didn't, and all of them looking to humanity, to him, for answers he didn't have. Before we start, he said, I want to make something clear. Earth isn't here to replace the Krell. We're not interested in building an empire. We're not going to tell you how to govern yourselves. Then what are you offering? Asked a Centauran delegate. A table, a place to talk, someone willing to listen when you've got disputes. Marcus paused. And if you can't resolve those disputes peacefully, We'll tell you you're being idiots and leave you to figure it out yourselves. Silence. Then, slowly, laughter. Uncertain at first, then genuine. That's your diplomatic strategy? The Centauran asked. Call us idiots? It's worked so far. More laughter. The tension in the room broke like a fever. The Krell would never have spoken to us like this, someone said. Marcus couldn't identify the species. They maintained distance, authority. They never admitted uncertainty. Yeah, well, humans are constantly uncertain. We're just too stubborn to let it stop us. Marcus leaned forward. Look, I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a cargo captain who accidentally started a revolution because I was too annoyed to surrender. But I know this. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. It needs species willing to work together without someone forcing them to. You want Earth's help? Great, we'll help. But we're not going to make your decisions for you. What if we make the wrong decisions? Asked a Vexel representative. Then you learn from them. Make better decisions next time. That's how this works. The Krell prevented us from making mistakes. The Krell prevented you from learning. There's a difference. The discussion continued for hours. Disputes about trade routes, resources, historical grievances. Marcus listened, asked questions, occasionally pointed out when species were being unreasonable. Didn't solve everything, didn't claim to. Just created space for species to solve things themselves. At the end of the first session, Crosstoll approached him. You did well. I mostly just let people talk. Exactly. The Krell would have imposed solutions. You created space for us to find our own. The Vexel's eyes gleamed. This is what governance should be. Not authority. Facilitation. Don't get philosophical on me. I'm still just a cargo captain. You're the cargo captain who changed the galaxy. Marcus didn't have a response for that. Years later, because time kept moving even when you wanted it to stop, Marcus Webb finally retired from public service and went back to his ship. The indomitable spirit was old now, outdated by newer designs. But she'd been to places no other vessel had gone. Had started a revolution with a cargo hold full of drones and audacity. Marcus guided her through Earth's orbital traffic, watching a planet that had transformed from isolated backwater to galactic crossroads in less than a decade. Stations everywhere. Ships from hundreds of species. The constant motion of a civilization that had learned it could shape the galaxy instead of being shaped by it. His comm chimed. Not official channels this time. Personal. Marcus. Shaltiva's voice. Older now. Retired from diplomatic service, last he'd heard. I wanted to say goodbye before you disappeared into whatever quiet corner you're planning to hide in. I'm not hiding. I'm hauling cargo. Of course you are. A pause. I've been thinking about our first conversation. When you told me humanity would make the Krell second-guess themselves. Do you remember? Yeah. You were right. We've spent the last decade second-guessing everything. Our methods, our authority, our entire approach to galactic governance. Shaltiva's voice carried something Marcus had never heard from her before. Uncertainty. The Dominion is changing, adapting, becoming something closer to what you described. A coalition of willing participants rather than an empire of subjects. That's good. It's terrifying. We built our entire civilization on certainty, on the belief that we knew best how to organize galactic society. You destroyed that certainty with one cargo ship and an unreasonable amount of stubbornness. Marcus smiled. You're welcome. I'm not thanking you. I'm telling you what you cost us. What did we cost you? Comfort. The security of knowing our place in the universe. The certainty that we were right. A long pause. But I suppose that's what you gave everyone else. The freedom to be wrong, to choose, to build something better than what we imposed on them. The galaxy's messier now. Yes, but it's theirs. Not ours. Not yours. Theirs. Shaltiva's voice softened. That's worth the discomfort, I think. I think so too. Goodbye, Marcus Webb. The galaxy won't forget what you did. The galaxy can try. The connection ended. Marcus sat alone in his captain's chair, and surrounded by stars, and thought about the path humanity had walked. From isolation to defiance to accidental revolution to galactic mediator. Not bad for a species that started by throwing rocks at predators and hoping for the best. The cargo manifest pinged. Supplies for Titan Station, medical equipment, construction materials, the normal work of keeping civilization running. Marcus engaged the drives and pointed the indomitable spirit toward the outer system. Behind him, Earth turned. Ahead of him, the galaxy sprawled in all its messy, chaotic, liberated glory. And somewhere in the background, radiation of space, the echo of one simple message continued propagating. Species could be free. Empires could fall. All it took was someone stubborn enough to try. Humanity had been that someone. Well, now the galaxy would have to figure out what to do with the freedom that stubbornness had brought. Marcus hoped they'd choose well, but whether they did or didn't, it was their choice to make. And that, in the end, was the only victory that mattered. Epilogue, 20 years later. The history books called it the Broken Chain Reformation, the period when the Krell Dominion transformed from empire to confederation, when species learned they could govern themselves, when humanity went from galactic newcomer to the symbol of defiant independence. The books talked about the Battle of Soros Prime, the Galactic Mediation Council, the treaties and alliances that reshaped civilization. What they didn't talk about much was Marcus Webb. He'd made sure of that, refused interviews, declined honors, went back to his cargo runs and let younger and smarter people manage the galaxy. But in quiet corners of 100 worlds, in the stories species told their children, there was a legend. Once, the Krell Dominion came to conquer a young species called humanity. They brought a battle station. They brought demands. They brought 6,000 years of imperial authority. Humanity sent one ship, a cargo hauler commanded by a stubborn man who refused to accept that bigger guns meant inevitable surrender. And that refusal changed everything. The legend wasn't entirely accurate. History rarely was. But it carried a truth that numbers and dates couldn't capture. Sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't technology or force. Sometimes it was just the absolute refusal to quit. Humanity had mastered that weapon, had used it to break an empire, and had taught the galaxy that freedom was possible if you were willing to fight for it. Not bad for a species that evolved on a death world and decided the universe needed to learn the same lessons they had. Nobody owns you unless you let them. And humans, for better or worse, were really bad at letting anyone own them. The galaxy was messier for it, more chaotic, more dangerous, but also more free. And freedom, Marcus had learned, was worth any amount of chaos. He hauled his cargo. He lived his life. He watched humanity spread through the stars like a virus of stubborn independence. And sometimes, on quiet nights between systems, he allowed himself to feel proud of what they'd accomplished. Not conquest, not empire, just the simple act of telling the universe that Earth's children would kneel to no one. That was enough. That was everything. The indomitable spirit sailed on through the dark, carrying her cargo and her history, and Marcus Webb smiled at stars that had finally learned to respect humanity's single greatest talent, being too stubborn to know when they were beaten, and winning anyway.